Welcome all of you out there to the Capital West London Opportunity Session, part of Real Estate Live UK, which is a week of free online events to keep the regeneration sector talking and keep the conversation going during this weird and critical time. Couple of words about Capital West London before we get going. Capital West London is the West London Borough's inward investment programme. It has been going for just over 2 years and it is tasked with promoting the sub-region to investors, developers and occupiers all over the world. We do a whole load of different things. We run a website, we run events when we're allowed to. We attend other events like MIPIM and we promote things like the West London Orbital and other opportunities that come up in the West London area. Our opportunities pack is something that we've been working on for the last few years. That has things like this, which I'm not going to cover too much today. Greenford Broadway car park is a site mainly in public ownership, which the council feels could deliver around about 100 homes. This is an example of the kind of thing which is on our website, and you can see a lot more there, capitalwestlondon.co.uk. But what we're going to do today is have a conversation with a couple of people about some of those opportunities in a little bit more detail. In a little while, we'll be speaking to Andrew Barry-Purssell from the West London Alliance about the West London Orbital, which runs through a number of West London's town centres. But first, we're going to go to Jonathan Broderick of Barnet Council, and we're going to have a little conversation first about Barnet, and then we will be going to talk about 3 opportunity sites, one of which is not even on the website yet because it's so new. So be excited because you're the first people who are going to hear about it. So Jonathan, just give us a little bit of an overview of Barnet and why people might think they should invest.
Sure, thanks. So good afternoon, everyone. And Ross, thanks for having me. Just a bit about Barnet quickly. So it's in the northwest of London, obviously. It's London's most populous borough. It has just close to 400,000 residents. It has 30 town centres and high streets, so quite a lot of urban areas. There are 23,000 businesses, the majority of which are micro and small businesses, and provides about 128,000 jobs. Just a bit about what's happening in Barnet in terms of growth and regeneration. So there are 6 major regeneration schemes currently underway. There are 3 major town centre interventions happening. These are improvements to public realm. There are 2 new railway stations being built, one in Colindale and one in Brent Cross, which I'll tell you a bit more about later. And in total, we're providing 20,000 new homes and 91,000 square meters of commercial space, providing 30,000 new jobs. And we're doing this working with developers and public sector partner organizations.
Okay, now we're going to have a chat about some of those opportunities that exist in Barnet in a little bit more detail. First one we're going to go to is Public Health England's current campus in Colindale. So, Jonathan, just give us a kind of overview of the context of this site.
Sure. So as Ross mentioned, this is Public Health England's site. So it's owned by the Department of Health and Social Care. They'll be moving to a new facility in Harlow, which is expected to be operational by about 2025. So this site, which is 4.77 hectares, will be available for redevelopment from 2025 to 2026 onwards. This site falls within what we call the Colindale growth area, and that's within a tall building area as well. It has very good access to public transport. You've got Colindale Station just to the east of the site, which is about 300 meters away, which is on the western branch of the Northern Line. So it has potential for significant intensification, I think, potentially could support a higher density development. And in terms of uses and scale, I think we can expect to see residential uses with some community uses provided on site, and probably somewhere in the range of 150 to 200 units, depending on the density.
And what, just thinking about the buildings that are around it, what kind of height and scale have you got around the site?
Yeah, so there are some tall buildings in the area already. So Collindale is kind of a new town center in Barnet, but we've seen a height that's sort of reaching from 10 to 20 or even 25 stories.
Okay, so pretty tall.
Yeah.
And what about the? It's a Department of Health site, obviously. So they will presumably pursue their normal procedures for disposal of a site.
Yes, yeah. So we'd expect you. Obviously, if you were interested in this site, we would put you in touch with them and go through their procurement team. Mm-hmm.
So at this stage, the kind of dialogue that you're looking for with potential investors is just to talk about what their aspirations might be for the site.
That's right. And then the sooner you get involved with us, I'm part of the regeneration team in Barnet. The sooner we get involved, the better, because we can discuss what's possible. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. Good. Right, well, if we move on to the next site, this one's interesting as well. It's Allen Way. Again, I think this is a bit slightly more mixed in its ownership pattern, Jonathan, but you're going to tell us all about that. So you tell us about the site.
Sure. So this is a slightly smaller site than the last one. It's 4.27 hectares. It's located in Whetstone Town Centre, which is in the northeast of the borough. And it's got mixed, as Ross said, it's got mixed public and private ownership. The site encompasses Totteridge and Whetstone Tube Station, which is on the eastern branch of the Northern Line. It also has about 100 space car park, some old storage units, and some industrial units. It's a good site for redevelopment, though, in terms of infrastructure. It's 20 minutes to Camden Town Station from here on the Northern Line.
And from what I remember of Totteridge and Whetstone, it's quite the average house value is quite high, I think, in the area.
Yeah, the eastern part of Barnet is I would say the more affluent side of the borough.
I mean, this is kind of almost in Hertfordshire, right?
Exactly. And I know this town centre, I think, was actually considered one of the best town centres in England a few years back. So it's quite a nice part of the borough.
And obviously, the site extends right up to the high road at the top end there.
That's right. Part of the site does front onto the high road, so you could expect to have some employment uses there or some high street uses, and it already has great access to high street functions. So sure. I think again, there's good potential for intensification, residential employment intensification here.
And from what I remember, there's quite a bit of I mean, you can obviously see the building footprints and the hard standing footprints as well, but most of what is green is woodland, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, there's a wooded area in the middle, so again, some potential for some really nice public realm around there. The site actually also slopes down towards the railway from the high road. So although the surrounding buildings are kind of medium rise, 3 to 5 story, you could potentially get away with some higher buildings towards the railway because of the topography.
Because you're dropping down to the railway, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. Good. Allen Way. Now, this is the next site is the new one for today. Excitement drum roll, revealing B&Q Cricklewood, which, as everyone can now see, is right next to the to Cricklewood Station. Jonathan, just give us a quick bit of background on this site and why it might be an opportunity, I think.
Sure. So this is a 3.7 hectare site located right in the middle of Cricklewood Town Centre. And for those who don't know, that's in the southwest corner of the borough. The current owner of this site is advancing plans, but is currently looking for investors. So if you were interested, we could put you in touch with them. I think it's a great site because of its location, really. So as you see on the map that Ross has put up there, just on the east of the red line boundary on the right-hand side, you'll see Cricklewood Station. And that takes you to King's Cross St. Pancras Station in 14 minutes by Thameslink. So it has it's very well connected. You've also got great bus access. Golders Green Tube Station is just to the east. So yes, it's in a great location.
And do we have any idea as to what we could get on this site?
Yeah, so I think we're expecting a kind of mixed use residential development here. And again, depending on density, could support anywhere from sort of 1,000 to 1,500 units. That would be assuming a pretty high density of sort of 200 units per hectare.
Sure.
But yeah, some potential for significant growth there.
Yeah, you're 15 minutes from King's Cross on the Thameslink, so
yeah, exactly.
That could work. And just to the east, no, just the west, sorry, of the site. There's a little bit of scrubland that we can see. I believe that's a currently proceeding scheme. Is that right?
Yes, so that's another scheme that's already going forward. The other important thing to mention is just to the north of this site, you have the Brent Cross Cricklewood regeneration area, which is probably the single biggest council regeneration scheme in the UK. Yeah, it's a 151 hectare site, which will be redeveloped. You're going to see 200 square feet of new retail, new infrastructure, including tube stations, 7,500 new homes, 3 new parks, 3 new schools. So it's a significant development just to the north of this site. So it'll really change the area.
Yeah, a lot of change coming. So Cricklewood indeed, and of course that Thameslink connection that goes to King's Cross also goes to Brent Cross, and to the new.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Just to the north. It's a half an hour walk or a very short ride on the train to Brent Cross. That's right.
And that's a new station which is funded and being delivered, right? As part of the
correct. Yeah, they just sort of approved the plans for that. Yeah, so that's going ahead right now.
Great. And of course that Brent Cross South station will connect to the West London Orbital, which gives this Cricklewood location a connection over
exactly.
to Hounslow in what, half an hour?
Andrew will answer that best, I think. But yeah, we'll hear about that in a minute, I suppose.
You have spotted my perfectly neat segue. So Jonathan, thanks very much.
Thank you.
As we're identifying now, we're now going to talk about a very significant piece of infrastructure improvement in West London, which will give rise to a great deal of regeneration opportunity along its route. What we're going to do, I'm going to introduce Andrew Barry-Purssell, and he's going to talk to you about West London Orbital. We're just going to start off, I think, by just talking about what it is, Andrew, talking about what's been done so far, what you're working on now, and what's going to happen over the next year or so on this really important project. So, Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Ross. The West London Orbital is a 12-mile extension of the London Overground system. At its heart is bringing back into passenger use a 4-mile stretch of track between Cricklewood, so there's your segue, through Old Oak to Acton. From there, services will use the North London line and then the Hounslow loop down to Hounslow. So it will link West Hampstead and Hendon to the northeast, running through Cricklewood, down through Neasden, Harlesden, Old Oak, Acton, down past the Golden Mile, the Great West Corridor, and into Hounslow. And just to illustrate the need for it, the journey between Harlesden and Brent Cross, which are about 3.5 miles apart, on the WLO will take slightly less than the conversation we're going to have this afternoon. At the moment, it takes you the best part of an hour. It's actually quicker to get from Harlesden to Southfields, which is near Wimbledon in South London, than it is at the moment to get from Harlesden to Brent Cross. So it's a scheme that we identified among West London boroughs as a priority, particularly because there's a gap in orbital links, which I'll talk about in a second. We did a lot of work around it and managed to enthuse Val Shawcross, the then Deputy Mayor for London. She then made sure that it was picked up and included in the Mayor's Transport Strategy in March 2018. It's also in the London Plan. And now we, Transport for London and Network Rail, are working very closely together to take it through its stages. So the next slide just sets out why we're doing it. The key to it, and we'll go through it later on kind of site by site, but it links up directly 4 opportunity areas across North and Northwest London that between them can provide over 56,000 new homes and nearly 119,000 new jobs. Places like Brent Cross, Wembley, Old Oak, and the Great West Corridor. And because it links up a number of other routes as well, by interchange it can serve 5 others that will provide another 38,000 homes and 18,000 jobs. Part of the reason that it's so important is at the moment, if you want to get from one part of northwest London to another, really between Wembley and Old Oak, you're reliant on 6 orbital roads, which includes the A406 North Circular, which is officially Great Britain's most crowded road. We did some work to identify the economic cost of congestion on those 6 roads. And if you just take the A406 and the A312, which is a road between Harrow and Heathrow alone, the delays that you have on those roads cost West London business £80 million a year, just on those 2 roads alone. If you looked at all of those routes, it would be even more. And public transport through that area is strictly limited. You can only go on road-based mode, so it's buses. And it's buses that, because they use congested roads, the trips take a very long time, and they're pretty unreliable. So the West London Orbital will give you quick orbital connection, a reliable service between places where people will be increasingly living and where they'll be working. And by doing that, and by avoiding people having to go into town and coming out again to do orbital trips, public transport in this part of London will become a viable alternative. At the moment, we are the 2nd highest sub-region in London in terms of car use. This will give public transport a major boost. It will relieve congestion on lines like the North London line and the Piccadilly line for the west and south. So it's important in terms of public transport. Ross rightly mentioned the work that we've done so far. So the stage that we have reached on the next slide is that we've produced an outline business case. So it says here that work on costs and benefits at a fairly early stage. As far as the costs are concerned, if you include the costs of preparation, so the work that we're doing at the moment plus the capital cost, that's about 500 million. That's not insignificant amount of money, but compared to some public transport projects I could mention, it's fairly modest, particularly for the return that you get. And the business case that we did in 2019 identified the scheme as being medium to high value for money, and work on that is still ongoing. So we're refining that value for money assessment all the time as we go ahead. So 2 very important pieces of work which are underway at the moment. The first is to make sure that we've captured all the benefits that the project will bring in terms of housing numbers, in terms of the number of jobs it might facilitate, and total return to the national economy. And that's all looking fairly encouraging. And then the other piece of work that we're doing is how to pay for it. Even before the COVID-19 outbreak, Transport for London's finances were in not a great place. They're in even less good place now. So what we're looking at is the package of funding options that we might have to use to get the project going. Of course, there'll be discussions between boroughs and TfL about the funding of it, but we'll be looking at things, I think, like development-related value capture, business rate retention options, whether there are transport-related taxation options like workplace parking levy, and whether there are national funding sources and grants that we can tap for funding. So at the moment, for example, we're talking about making a bid for the Restoring Your Railway Fund to help fund the project. So in terms of where we are at the moment, and the slide that I've got on the timetable, which is the next one, is obviously pre-COVID. So please don't hold us to the precise dates in stage 2. We're doing a lot of detailed work on the technical feasibility of the scheme. So we're looking at, for example, what infrastructure improvements would have to be made along the route, whether or not some of the level crossings that there are along the route, and there are a couple in the Acton area where they need to be closed permanently, and what that means. How will power services? At the moment, there are a couple of stretches of the line which aren't electrified, and the national policy at the moment, and London policy as well, is not to have any more diesel trains. Signalling, for the rail enthusiasts out there, this is the last part of the last area of track in London that still has semaphore signalling. And there are enthusiasts for that sort of thing, but we're looking at re-signalling. The capacity of the stations which exist at the moment, and identifying the stations that would have to, the new stations that would have to be provided. Looking at various pinch points that are along the track. So there's where the Dudding Hill line meets the North London line at Acton Wells. We'll have to build a kind of rail flyover to get the 2 services to match, rolling stock and depots and that sort of thing. And all being well, and so far we haven't hit any absolute showstoppers, we would be applying for a Transport and Work Act order in order to start the first trains running in the mid to late 2020s. And having given you that taster, the next slide shows you the route, which I suspect is what we will spend more time talking about. And you'll see that that it starts off with two branches, one from Hendon, the other from West Hampstead. The Hendon branch runs through Brent Cross West, the West Hampstead one runs through Cricklewood. Then it runs down through Neasden, Harlesden, Old Oak Common, and then through Acton. A new station at Lionel Road, which will allow access to the Brentford Community Stadium there. Then Brentford itself, which is in the middle of the Great West Corridor, then down into Hounslow. And you'll see here the opportunity areas that it runs through, and you'll also see the opportunity areas that it will serve through interchange, because the other interesting thing it shows is where the interchange opportunities are. So the Jubilee line at Neasden, the Bakerloo line at Harlesden. Old Oak is interesting because it's probably going to be for a while at least the London terminal for HS2. Then it gets into interchanges with National Rail as you get round to Hounslow. And that is, in a nutshell, is the West London Orbital.
Fabulous. So just in general, I mean, you mentioned the COVID-19 issue relating, I think, a little bit to funding, but it strikes me that this line eliminates the need for a lot of radial travel. So to go from, as you said, Brent Cross to Harlesden, you'd have to go in and then come out again. Well, that's what you do at the moment. And eliminating radial travel and reducing the amount of time spent on public transport is presumably going to be a good thing, Andrew.
Yes, I think that's right. It will avoid some radial travel. It will make other radial travel much more efficient, because it will mean if you want to go from one radial route to another, you don't have to go into central London, go from one terminus to another.
Yeah, quite. And I think it will also allow people, or potentially allow people, there's a number of locations along the line where commercial property might be quite possible. It allows people the possibility of getting to work in those locations more easily and more quickly.
I think that's right. And I think the one thing that the current crisis has shown up with transport networks is the importance of resilience.
Yeah.
There are parts of London where if the underground route goes down, the rest of public transport collapses fairly quickly afterwards. For quite a lot, for a number of these trips we're talking about, this is building in resilience. So that doesn't happen. So not only does it make transport quicker, it makes it more reliable.
And just touching on Old Oak as well. As you said, the line is expected to terminate there for a few years. Now, what does that do to the business case for this line, or do you not know that yet?
We don't know for sure, but I think if you look at that, one of the positions will be if HS2 stops there, public transport in that area is going to have to carry quite a burden. Not everybody who gets off the HS2 is going to want to go into central London or need to go into central London, and that's one of the roles that this line could very well fulfil.
Well, you've also got the West London line at that point as well, which is
yes,
sort of the map. But yeah, because we'll be sharing some of that burden, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just having a look at Neasden. I mean, you mentioned that's an interchange with the Jubilee line. Obviously Neasden isn't an interchange at the moment. That gives Neasden some potential, and also I think there's quite a good connection there to the green area to the west, to Wembley East. So, what does the West London Orbital do for Wembley?
Well, I think for Neasden, it gives you almost a transformational possibility. The council is Brent Council at the moment is doing some master planning for the Neasden area, and they've identified capacity without the WLO for about 2,000 homes. They think that with the WLO, they could probably double it. If you know Neasden Station at the moment, you'll know it's in the middle of the area around it is land that's used for waste management, effectively. I think the next door site is used for storing skips. But this would make that that part of Neasden, large-scale development, a practical proposition. And I think that in turn would help catalyse the bit between Neasden and the stadium that at the moment is slightly underdeveloped. There's real potential there. It's potential that we and Brent are very keen to see optimised.
Okay, and then Harlesden, obviously, again, you've got an interchange there. I mean, what do you think that this line does for Harlesden?
Well, I think the importance of the interchange there is it gives you, from the Bakerloo line, you've got access from the Harrow and Wealdstone development area and from other parts of Wembley. Harlesden is an interesting location because it's right on the edge of the Old Oak Park Royal Development Corporation area. So it's an area that is already got quite a lot of development potential. In terms of housing, it will link Harlesden to a number of major employment growth areas, both to the northeast and to the southwest. So in terms of the residential proposition, I think it's a significant transformation there.
Okay. And then skipping through, talk about Acton if you like, but I was heading for Lionel Road because I know there's a new football stadium there, which is in theory going to be welcoming its first spectators in August of this year, where Brentford FC will be playing. Now, from there and then to Brentford, and then there's the Golden Mile down in Hounslow. This must be creating quite a bit of opportunity.
Well, I think it does. The Lionel Road queue area is an area that's undergone has undergone massive change, and there's really significant potential there for a whole mixture of development. Some of which, as I say, has already got underway. But I think that taken with Brentford and the Great West Corridor, the Great West Corridor is a very interesting location. There's a lot of potential building on what's there already. And Hounslow have got some quite ambitious plans the Hounslow Council got some quite ambitious plans for the area. It's going to be a significant employment growth area, particularly for some of the growing sectors of tomorrow. There's a big media cluster around there for example. And I think that the WLO, because it will link that area of employment growth with areas where people will be living, it increases the number of people who will be able to access jobs there. I think it will help increase the opportunity, boost the attractiveness of the opportunities there.
Yeah, I mean you mentioned media. I mean that Sky are based at Scion Lane, and I think that that area is obviously a creative enterprise zone as well, so there's some advantages to companies going in there, and I know that there are some plans to bring forward, for example, the Gillette building has some progress on it for the first time for many years, so there could be a great deal of creative industries employment around there, and of course that's a growth sector. Film in particular helped keep us out of recession towards the end of last calendar year. So that's connecting a lot of people in Neasden, Harlesden and Acton to a lot of jobs along the Golden Mile. That's got to be good, right, Andrew?
Well, I think that's right. And I think we slightly skipped over Acton, but there are places like the Acton Park office location around there, where there are a number of international firms who've established either their UK or their European headquarters there. And I think that it's not only is it a kind of a magnet for key sectors, but it's a magnet also for inward investment. And I think the fact that you're going to get something which will be okay, it's a modestly, it's not the greatest, it's not the most, it's not Crossrail, but it is a visible sign that there is an interest in investing in the area and of linking all these opportunities up and making all these opportunities along this string add up to more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah, good. Okay. So, all right. So, I think that completes our little tour of the line, Andrew. Is there anywhere else you want to mention?
No, I think the only thing I'd add to that is that we've obviously concentrated on the big opportunities along the line. If you travel along from station to station and look at the areas around the stations, there are plenty of small and medium-sized opportunities there as well, which this will help give a kickstart to.
Yeah, and of course, as well as this, and we've been talking about it before, but there is the opportunity to improve the local links from the stations away from the line, so bus routes and cycle routes and so on that allow allow the benefit to be spread out. So so the people who live nearby but not within walking distance can still use this line and have it help their life. And I know that there's some discussion going on with TfL about that, Andrew, is that right?
No, that's right. And we've actually got some funding for each of the boroughs in West London to do some planning around those complementary uses. Great. To make sure that we get the biggest bang for the buck.
So how can people best engage with this opportunity that is the West London Orbital then, Andrew? What's the best way for them to...
Well, one of the things that would be enormously helpful, we have a little website which allows people to register their support for the West London Orbital. There it is, and there's the link. If you tap on it, there's a little button that allows you to show your support. We keep people's details, and then as we have news about how the project is progressing, we will let people know. I think the really important thing, particularly at the moment when everything is kind of up in the air, obviously everyone is reassessing their investment priorities, and the most important thing I think is for us to build up a very good head of steam of support behind the WLO and make sure that when those discussions are had, the WLO does not get forgotten.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay. So people can engage. That's good. Right. I think what we're going to do now. Let's see. Let's stop the share. Now you should be able to see us all. We've got a quick poll to run. Which I'll just do. Oh no, it's been done. There you go. Got a quick poll about the West London Orbital. Which of the opportunity areas on the orbital has the most promise? So feel free to answer that, all those people who are out there. We're getting some answers coming in. While that's happening, I'll just take a quick look. We've got some questions. So, Jonathan, while that poll's coming in, I've got a question here for you, which says, that was really interesting. Which of those sites in Barnet would you invest in?
Well, I think because I'm responsible for the town centres in the west of the borough. I mostly work with Cricklewood. I think for me, that would be the one of the most interest to me. I didn't mention it in my presentation, but we've also got a really strong community in Cricklewood who are extremely involved and proud of the area. I think it would be pushing an open door if you wanted to invest or develop that area.
And if I think what you said was that there's a existing owner who's looking for other potential partners. Am I right? Correct.
That's right. So yeah. So if you were interested in that, get in touch with us. Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. So people can just engage by doing that. Question I think for Andrew. You got something coming here saying how can someone register an interest in a particular orbital site?
I think that the best way is if you would drop Ross and I an email to do that, and we'll see what we can do.
Right. Okay. Because it's tricky to. I mean, you mentioned the scrapyard in Neasden. The scrapyard, the skip location in Neasden. I mean, that's going to be a privately owned site, right?
That one is a privately owned site.
Yeah.
And I think there are developers who are potentially interested in it at the moment.
Okay.
But I think that's what Capital West London and the West London Alliance exist to do. So just let us know between us, and we can put you in touch with people at the relevant council.
Yeah, and I think the thing to do, and at Capital West London, as part of my work, I've had people flag up locations to me and ask me what the what kind of an opportunity it might be, and I've been able to help most of them. So that's been useful. So if people do spot a site and they think that's interesting, I wonder what I could do with that. If you get in touch with me through the website capitalwestlondon.co.uk, then I can help you. Well, I think we're going to share the results of this poll. Jonathan's going to make you happy. Which of the opportunity areas on the West London Orbital has the most promise? Ta-da! It's a Barnet site. You'll be happy to see. Yeah. So funny enough, but Brent Cross comes out ahead of Old Oak. That's kind of interesting. And Acton doing quite well as well, which will please you, Andrew.
It all pleases me.
Very pleased it does. Okay, all right. So I've got another question here for Andrew. which is that it's a COVID-19 question, and I suspect. Well, I'm not going to predict your answer. What impact is COVID-19 likely to have on the timeline for the progress behind the West London orbital?
It's like most things about COVID-19. It's way too early to tell. There are two possible answers. One is that it could significantly slow it down, and at the moment, actually, so far it's not had a massive effect on the program, because all the people at TfL who are working on it, well, not all of them, the project manager certainly hasn't been furloughed, and I'm still working on it full time, and Network Rail is still working on it. The question, the upside of this is that, of course, everybody is now thinking about recovery from COVID-19, and it's clear the economy is going to take a hit. It's also clear, I think, that infrastructure is going to be part of the answer. So there are kind of opportunities and threats to this, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier on about building support for the project. If we can build support for the project and make that support heard, it can be the latter, not the former.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be the problem, I guess, is that there's going to be a lot of calls on public money and a lot less public money, probably, to answer those calls. I mean, what role might there be for private sector involvement in funding the West London orbital?
Well, I think there's a difference between the funding and the financing. The financing will certainly be, there'll be heavy private sector involvement. The core problem with the funding side of it is finding the income stream that can support that financing. And really, I've sketched out some of the options that we might be doing around business rates, getting stuff, land value capture from the development process, and that sort of thing. Some of those will involve the private sector. Some of them will certainly need private sector support for the public sector. I think this is a conversation that we could probably have with much more specificity, where I can get down to brass tacks when some of this funding and financing work has been done to a bit more detail.
Uh-huh. We've got a kind of supplementary question come in for that, which is there any public money needed for it? I thought it was going to be funded from housing contributions and SIL and so on. Andrew.
Well, I think the experience of other projects of this kind is that what you do is the most important thing to do is to get a package of different things, so that if one thing doesn't do so well, you can find options from other sources. I think SIL and Section 106 and kind of development will pay quite a lot of it, as it has with Crossrail. But I don't think it'll be enough to pay for the entire thing. So we will be looking across a whole range of other things. Yeah,
and the thing in terms of revenue from this line, one of the great things about it from a travelling point of view is that is also a bad thing in terms of revenue, in that it doesn't cross a fair boundary. Am I right about that?
And that is, yes, and that is an issue.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that I think will have to be taken into account, both when we look at funding and financing, and when we look at the specification for the line. So we'll have to design it so that it can be run efficiently.
Okay. And what role? What do you think we should be asking? I mean, we talked a lot about local government and TfL and London government. What about national government? Is there any role for them to be playing in this? Do you think we could talk to them about it?
Well, there is, and we have talked to them about it. So they make money available through housing infrastructure funding. What used to be known as HIF now is known as SHIF, but it's the same thing. So there will be a process. There will be various opportunities during the process to bid for central government money. We've had early discussions with them because the project is at a fairly early stage, which were generally positive. I think the important thing will be when we do have those discussions with government slightly further down the line, that we can fairly say that we have got strong private sector backing, because that's enormously important when you have those sorts of discussions.
Okay, great. And now we've got just a question here for you, Jonathan. The site in Totteridge,
yeah,
and in fact the PHE is asking about two sites, and the PHE site in Colindale. how are these going to be marketed? So suggesting perhaps direct sale or OG or whatever. I mean, I think the two of them will be rather different, but you go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, despite the Public Health England site, obviously is Department of Health and Social Care. And I should say that in both the instances, it's yet to be determined. So there isn't a specific process in mind for that. But we could come back to that with you if you're interested. Get in touch with Ross or myself, and we can put you in contact with them.
Okay, so the anonymous attendee can just get in touch with me, and we'll work it out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Okay. Well, I think what are we doing on time? Yeah, 2:41. So I'm just going to wrap up now. We've got one more poll to do, which let's see how I do that. Oh, we do this, of course. There we go. The poll's on. So we've got another poll here. This is a general poll that we're conducting on all the Real Estate Live events. It's asking what the most important factor in kickstarting development and recovering the strength of UK real estate will be post-COVID-19. So you just get to choose one. So you guys choose away while I just wrap up. I just want to thank our two speakers, Jonathan Broderick and Andrew Barry-Purssell, for giving their time today. I thought that was really interesting. There's the thing that strikes me is the scale and diversity of opportunity that exists across. I know we only talked about one borough today, but there's plenty across Barnet. That's mirrored in all of the other boroughs. Then the West London Orbital is just such a great opportunity to get involved in. And I think hopefully we've enthused you about the possibilities that exist here and make you want more. If you do want more, as we've said, get in touch with me through that website, capitalwestlondon.co.uk, and we can talk hopefully about getting you involved in our beautiful sub-region. Just a quick word about Real Estate UK. There's one further session this afternoon, which is a session with RIBA. Then tomorrow morning we have a fabulous London panel, which many of the people who are interested in West London, you might well be interested in the rest of London. Obviously, I'm biased, but I'll put it anyway, just for the sake of it. We have a number of speakers from London Partners and leaders from London boroughs talking about London and its economic recovery and how people can get involved and play a part in that. So it should be very interesting. There's plenty of other sessions going through the week. There is an Ealing session tomorrow as well. I'm contractually bound to mention. So check out the program on the website at Real Estate Live and sign up for the sessions and join in with them and enjoy them, hopefully, as much as you have this one. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. And
thanks very much, Ross.
Thank you.